All right, welcome to our fourth episode of Clicks and Conversations. Today we're welcoming our first guest on the show. Round of applause. Yay! Greg Dolecki. He comes with decades of experience as a full stack marketer, and he is a self-described full stack marketer. Greg, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I think you did a great job. Thanks for having me first and foremost, ladies. I appreciate the invite. Glad to be here. Yeah, full stack. We'll add agile into that description. Full stack agile marketing leader. I have deep expertise in transforming reactive efforts into strategic revenue generating initiatives that hopefully deliver measurable business results. That's ultimately the goal, right?
Yeah, totally. At the end of the day, it can look pretty, but is it driving revenue, right? That's what everyone wants to
Exactly.
know. The brass tacks. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and you being here. So, you say you describe yourself as a full stack marketer. What exactly does that mean? Like, what goes into that? Can you, because like a lot of people are starting to say that right now. There's like this term of like I'm a full stack SEOer. I'm like, what does that mean? So, well, full
Yeah,
stack
so
marketer.
from a marketing perspective, if you think about the entire marketing umbrella and or the spectrum, right? You've got email, you've got SEO, you've got pay per click, and down the line. So a full stack marketer is somebody that has experience in all those relevant functions that fall underneath that marketing umbrella, but not necessarily expertise in one specific area. So what's great about a full stack marketer is that they understand how to leverage each one of those pillars, we'll call them, within the marketing spectrum to, as I said earlier, drive that revenue to create those campaigns that are going to be compelling and get your ICP to take the action that you're looking for.
Gotcha. Yeah, that it just sounds overwhelming. That sounds like a lot of work, but also kind of fun.
Yeah, well,
Definitely a
some days
lot of
it
work.
feels like juggling chainsaws in the office, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Yeah.
definitely
I'm scary.
juggling chainsaws. As a content marketer and a brand person, I often think about my role, which isn't as general as your role, but I think about content as demand gen. However, at the same time, the relationship can be a little tricky. In my conversations with you, have been really helpful. You've built demand gen programs from scratch at multiple companies. What's the most common mistake you see marketers making when they're trying to generate pipeline?
Yeah, and quite frankly, that's a great question, and it seems to be prevalent across the board. It's ignoring your ICP, your ideal customer profile.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that important? Because if you don't know who they are, where they are, how they buy, you're really just wasting your budget talking to people that'll never convert.
Right. And a lot of people, I understand marketers are creative. Typically, they can be really intuitive. And, every marketer loves to think about how smart they are, but we can't just guess. We can't just use logic out of our brains. We've got to really do that type of digging. Um, while we're on the topic of demand gen, what is an unpopular opinion that you have about demand gen? And what do marketers do that they think works that you think is totally overrated?
Oh, well, I have to think about that one for a second. I have an answer, but it's probably going to be an unpopular one, but I'll clarify the reason why I say this, and that's gated content. Okay, now gated content as a standalone, I think is a mistake. And what I mean by standalone is, let's just say you put out a webinar on some specific topic, but you have no other content that's relevant to that webinar topic, that you're distributing, or it's on your website. So if you have this webinar standalone content, many marketers think that gated content equals intent, when in fact it doesn't necessarily equal intent. Often it's just curiosity. I've seen many organizations where they have gated content, they're getting a lot of form fills, but the form fills are garbage, right? It's just full of fake email addresses just so they can get the content because they're curious. They may not have any kind of intent behind why they want to download the book or watch the webinar, whatever the case might be. So my approach to gated content is a couple things. One, make sure that you've got other relevant content that support what that gated content is. And then two, speaking of relevant content, many times it's better to offer more valuable content for free without asking for something in return, right? Because at the end of the day, we're really trying to build trust with our audience. And so I think one way to build trust is, here, Mr. Prospect, here's some really good information for you that we're not going to ask you for your information back. And then the more that you're able to do that and establish that trust, the more likely they're going to be to then fill out that form with intent.
Another way that I've looked at gated content in the past has been a source of contact information. I now have contacts that I can nurture. I now have leads that I can nurture. What do you, without that gated content, how do you replace that? What do you do instead? How do you get the people to nurture?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a replacement for gated content, right? I mean, to your point, the function of gated content is to get that contact information so that they can fall within the funnel or within the buyer's journey, whatever nomenclature you want to use. But again, it's not just putting that piece out there as a standalone. You have to be able to establish yourself as a thought leader in whatever space that you're in by providing that valued content up front in order to get, we'll call it, valued contact information from somebody that's most likely looking to buy from you versus somebody that's just interested in watching a webinar but has absolutely no intent of continuing to engage with your brand.
Yeah, I was going to say, for SEO, I hate gated content, right? Like, I'm like, give it all, give it up, give it for free.
Well, it gives you no value.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to optimize. Like being at an agency for a while that dealt with primarily B2B tech, it was like kind of old school. They had a ton of demand, those like, form fill landing pages, and they're like, can you do SEO optimize it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, can you ungate your piece of content?
Right.
And I did kind of start to get them to do that slowly. We started ungating old pieces and looking at, what target keyword we could go after and optimize it for. But, when you first asked that question, Christina, I was kind of like retargeting, I think people were doing these form fills. They were doing these form fills, before, and doing the nurturing campaigns before like retargeting probably was a thing. And, so now it's like when I do competitor research for some clients, I know who's on their remarketing game, right? Because as soon as I open my phone and I'm on Instagram, I get an ad. It's like in my face. Like, whoa, okay, calm down. Then I tell my clients, hey, your competitors are doing aggressive retargeting. Like, I go to their site once to look at a page, and they're following me around the internet. So the game's changed a little bit, I feel like.
The game's changed, but I'm even still trying to rethink that because retargeting, like you said, it's aggressive. It's annoying. It's, I don't want to think about Borelli pasta, and I don't want to think about a pasta brand and then have it jump out at me on my Instagram feed, which seems to be what happens. So that's filling out forms is annoying. Giving up your information is annoying. Retargeting is annoying. So I would love to even rethink that, but that's another conversation for another time.
Well, just to close the loop on the form fill thing, I think at the end of the day, it's really just about doing it strategically, right? You're not doing it for every single piece of content. You're going to want to do it strategically, sparingly, to make sure that, again, the people that are filling out the form are the people that have some level of intent to buy your product or service.
This is a good segue to jump into another question for you, Greg, now that you're in the hot seat with us. When it comes to SEO and your integrated marketing campaigns, how are you seeing that evolve? And like, how are you seeing all these channels kind of start to work together? And, the term right now is like, you're optimizing for everywhere. So SEO is becoming this optimize your brand for everywhere. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. What's your take on that evolution and that overall kind of perception and strategy?
Well, to me, optimization means delivering a seamless and personalized experience at every customer touch point, not necessarily just in search. Now, I think the question also is around, how do you go about doing that, right? And it's using data and technology to ensure that your brand message is consistent, it's got to be relevant, and it's got to be engaging across all channels. Now, from a marketer's perspective, in order to really capitalize on using data and technology, right, you've got to constantly test, learn, and adapt to keep pace with the evolving customer expectations, because they're constantly changing.
Yeah.
That's I like that. Sorry. Go ahead, Christina.
I have a question. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck yeah. Let's curse.
Let's play a game.
Do we swear? Curse or swear? What do we do?
It's the same thing.
Same thing. Say bad words.
I
naughty
say
words.
curse, cuss.
Cuss. There you go. That's the word.
Let's play a game of fuck, marry, kill.
What is that? Oh, okay. Oh, this is good, actually.
Cersei
This is great. I
Lannister,
love this.
Jon Snow. Just kidding. So really, it would be one tactic to kill, one tactic to keep,
Right.
one to revive. So
I like
kill
that.
is kill. What's keep? Marry. Revive is fuck, I guess. Okay. Webinars, cold email, content syndication.
All right, wait. Webinars, cold email, and content syndication. Kill, marry, fuck.
Kill, keep, revive.
Got it. Kill cold email. Cold email's got to go.
Definitely. It's dead. I hate it.
It's terrible.
Webinars, marry.
It's terrible because most people are terrible at messaging. Go on.
Well, it's not even messaging. What I've seen throughout my career when it comes to it's just a spray and pray approach, which absolutely does not work. It never works. So kill cold email because it sucks.
Okay.
Marry, I would say webinars, because they can provide a lot of really good insight and content that you can actually slice, dice, and use like throughout let's just say a quarter's worth of planning for content. And revive, content syndication. I don't think enough companies are doing a lot of that. So that would be my answer.
What do you mean by content syndication? Because it means something different for me in the SEO world, so I'm just kind of curious. What does it mean for you in your world?
I think of it as like almost like in the magazine world, Nicole, you'll get this. Like I think of it as like advertorial.
Okay.
What do you think about? What do you think?
Similar. It's you write a piece of content, it's on your website, but then you're able to push it through to another third party for them to use it on their website or to push it to their subscribed audience.
Or you co-produce something, or you have a great partner that has different resources than you do, and you team up and co-produce something. You kind of can share the wealth.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies don't really move in the direction of content syndication because it's a pay-to-play environment.
Yeah, but if you're spending money on paid ads, you might as well spend money on something that actually has more like useful value, I think.
100%. I'm an advocate for content syndication. Whenever I build budgets, I always try to put some money towards content syndication.
Same.
I think it does work.
Cheers. Product placement. Olipop.
Product placement. Okay, so
one more thing I have to add is webinars. I like that, but when I think about webinars, you can sort of like going live with like an AMA as a webinar, live on whatever, YouTube or Reels. I think a podcast can sort of act as a webinar. So that's a really big space that you can play in. So I like marrying that.
Agreed.
Cool. I just had a question though, and I really like this game, Christina. I kind of want to do another one. like the content syndication, you said, Greg, you always build like a budget for that. Like what does that look like? I'm just kind of curious. Like what would it kind of like determine based off publications, based off like obviously your client, but like are there specific areas within certain industries that you always recommend?
It's not that I would always recommend, and it doesn't really necessarily have to be industry specific. It's more so around if, how do I just say this? Many times there are organizations that have a large membership base, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say
Mm-hmm.
50,000. And of those 50,000, let's say 40,000 of them have opted in to get information from this entity, right?
Gotcha.
And so that's a captive audience. That's 40,000 people that have not subscribed to anything that I'm doing, but subscribing to this entity where they're a membership, where they have a membership. And so I want to get my content in front of those 80,000 eyeballs, right? 40,000 times 2, 80,000. And I think there's a ton of value in that. Now, the ROI isn't immediate, right? Because again, it's all about establishing that trust. But the fact that I can get something in front of those 40,000 individuals that increases my reach, increases my awareness, and at some point down the road, it will pay dividends.
Gotcha. So like search engine journal is something that I read. So like I might want to pay to have, be a part of their email marketing campaign or something like that, or pay to write an article on their site or something.
Yeah, I mean, you could pay, or many times these organizations, the membership is free. Like the base membership is free. They probably have tiers where you pay, $10 a month and you get X, Y, and Z. But regardless of whatever tier, whether it's free or not, the chances of you opting in and receiving content from me is very high, right? Because I am now paying to get in front of your audience. And I don't care if they're a paid member or a free member. I just want my content in front of your audience.
Yep. And who usually like leads that charge internally on teams? The content.
It's usually the marketing person, right? Whether it's director of marketing, VP. Well, I wouldn't say the VP, because typically it's the director of marketing. The VP, manages down and says, okay, well, these are our goals. Now, please build a plan to make sure that we can attain these goals. And so going back to the whole full stack conversation we had at the beginning of the podcast, right? This is just another piece of that where you're talking about content and what in the realm of content are we talking about? Are we talking about building content or syndicating content, right? So that's where that would come into play.
Yeah. So I guess it would be kind of like, I don't know, because I used to work with PR teams. Would a PR person be looking into content syndication, or would that land kind of more in like advertising, do you think?
Well, there would probably be a content lead within a marketing team. And so that person would be charged with like securing those placements, we'll call them placements for lack of a better term, securing those placements, partnerships, right? There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Securing those partnerships with those organizations.
Awesome. All right, I'm done with the content syndication questions. I just found that kind of fascinating. That's something that I haven't heard in a while. I hear SEOs talk about it every once in a while. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really also a good way, you might work for a smaller company, you don't have a ton of resources, but one of your partners may, or a publication may, and they can probably, at times do legwork for you, like surveys and customer surveys and all kinds of valuable information that now, if you've put a stamp on it and worked with them on it, is your proprietary information, like a trend report or, and that's just, it's good brand building. So I'm always thinking about content. Greg, when you're tasked with fixing bad content performance, do you start with data, audience, or format?
Always start with data, whether it's content performance or PPC performance, SEO performance. You always got to start with the data.
But not data.
Not data, data. Data, tomato, tomato, right?
I say
Uh,
data.
yeah. You always got to start with the data because that's going to uncover a lot of things that normally you wouldn't have thought otherwise. And so starting with the data, and the data then should lead you towards, is it format? Is it the type of content? Is it the channel? So to answer the question, always start with the data.
And then test.
And then test. Great. Test, iterate, rinse, repeat. Correct.
Yeah. How do I always find it tricky. Like I'm always trying to walk the line between how do I provide a really good read, a really good listen, but also, try to sell the product. How do you make ABM content feel like anything but a sales pitch?
Personally, and again, this might not be popular opinion, I don't like content to be salesy at all.
Right.
I would akin it to like a webinar. And my approach to webinars is a 90-10 rule. 90% educational and we'll say 10% salesy. And typically the way I will run a webinar is the last few minutes of the webinar is the sales pitch, not anything before that. And so I think content, the way that I manage content is kind of the same way. Regardless of where they are in the journey or funnel or whatever you want to call it, it's more about that education piece, right? It's educational, it's got to inform, maybe on some level it entertains, but at the end of the day, it's got to be engaging, right? And providing that level of content, regardless of where they are in the buyer's journey, it's going to, again, establish that trust. And you can add bits and pieces of sales talk in there. But the fact that it's coming from the company, I think the recipient already knows that there's a sales component to it without being so overt about it.
Yeah. And, customers are a lot more savvy than they used to be. So that said, do you believe that content can actually change someone's mind? I was recently asked how content can change people's behavior. And I really had to think long and hard about it. Is it just like decorating the buyer's journey? What's your opinion?
No, I don't think it decorates the buyer's journey at all. And I think there's proof in the pudding that content does change buyer behavior and can lead to sales. I think the challenge is managing expectations as it relates to content and leading to that conversion. I've worked in organizations where the mentality is, marketing equals immediate sales. And this is on the B2B side, which for those listening, as well as I do that that's just not true. So I think it's really just managing expectations for those that don't understand the value of content and that it's kind of a long game, for lack of a better term. But at the end of the day, I'm going to repeat it probably throughout this entire podcast. You got to establish that trust. Establish the fact that you're an expert or a thought leader or you have a huge brand presence in whatever industry that you're in. And at the end of the day, it's all about driving that conversion. But it doesn't happen overnight when it comes to content.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like dating. That's what I always say. Marketing's like dating.
It is.
You got to build that trust. You don't ask somebody to marry you on the first date, right?
Well, you could, but that would probably end in disaster.
I think Nicole.
Yeah, I was asked.
Yeah.
On the first date, but it was more like, do you see yourself getting married one day? It was kind of like,
I don't want to offend Trish, so I just stopped right there.
I know. Yeah. It's an ongoing joke, but anyways.
So there's a lot of buzz right now, and I'm rolling my eyes. AI is eating marketing. I'm fucking sick of this conversation. But let's have it anyway.
Yeah, let's have it anyway.
I'm sick of hearing people talk about the MJash. Stop it. What is your current POV on AI generated content? Question mark.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for the rest of that question.
I know. I was like,
a little bit more to that. My POV on AI generated content. Quite frankly, I think AI is changing the game. Um, it allows marketers to generate more content at scale and very quickly. However, however, there needs to be guardrails, right? You can't just put in a prompt to chat GPT, for example, and say, spit this out, take it at gospel, and then go use it. Right. The way that AI works, it works very sequentially. Right. So if you give it 4 bullet points, it's gonna spit out the content with in that specific order. And that order may not make sense when it's crafted into a narrative, right? So at minimum, AI at least gives you a foundation from which to build from. You can't just take it at face value. You've got to really be able to understand the type of content you're building and making sure that it's humanized and that it makes sense.
Yes. And I agree. Guardrails. I think my philosophy is like, if you are a shitty editor and you're a shitty content marketer, you're going to put out shitty content, whether you're using AI or 10 freelancers. So let those people work for brands who don't succeed. Let people who are smart and dynamic creatives use AI and succeed.
Yeah, AI should be viewed as an extension of the marketing team, or maybe even as a consultant, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Right? You have an idea, you're not really sure how to start it, so you're asking AI, "Hey, I've got this idea. Can you help me figure out the best way to kind of start this and go about it?" And then again, you just build off of that.
Yeah.
My take on it is use AI to do all your admin work, like do all this stuff. Like, don't be spending time on responding to an email. Like, use AI to craft your email responses. That's what I do, because like that is such a time suck answering emails. And then you have more time to be creative, right? Like, I don't think AI will really ever completely replace the human creative mind, right? Because it still needs a prompt, right? You still need to feed it like information, right? And messaging and all that. That comes from brainstorming with human minds.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the way that I've been using AI really is, for some SEO tasks, like helping me to write, meta descriptions or title tags, but I'm definitely asking it to write me 5 variations, and then I'm choosing my favorite one and then making sure it looks good. Like, I'm still putting it through like a review process. I'm not just copying and pasting whatever it spits out first time. You know what I mean? I'm still proofing it, QAing.
Yeah, same. And I use it for almost everything. And you would never know, and it's not like fluff because I'm a good editor.
Right. Yeah, and I think another key piece of this AI conversation is let's call it personalization and customization, right? As you're writing these emails or trying to create, an ad campaign, giving it the right prompts, letting it understand who your ICP is, what the messaging is, asking it to provide some compelling and concise calls to action. It'll most likely spit out some things that the three of us probably would have never thought of. So it just opens up a whole new world of options, which is awesome.
Totally. Yeah, and speaking of buzzwords and buzz and language and being an editor, I had a conversation with you recently. I'm pivoting to leadership, and we've had a couple conversations about it, and you've described yourself as, and I'll put it in quotes, servant leader. And I don't mean to come across as so contradictory and combative on this podcast, but to me, I had problems with the term because it just, to me, sounds like more corporate jargon, buzzwords that's replacing human language. Servant leader is a corporate way of saying I'm empathetic. Can you describe, because I think, as we see it more and more in the corporate landscape, what does it mean, and are you a servant leader?
So you're 100% right. It's corporate jargon. it is the biggest buzzword now. I see it in job descriptions. People talk about it all the time. Yes, it's corporate jargon. But by its definition, someone who's a servant leader prioritizes the needs and well-being of their team before and the organization before their own. That's really the definition of a servant leader. You said one thing that really encompasses that term servant leader into empathy, right? So the way that I describe my leadership style outside of using the term servant leader is I lead with empathy, I empower my team, and I foster collaboration. I think those three things are really what a servant leader is.
Yeah. I think I also have problems with the word servant. It's just a very odd choice of words. So I will never use it, but I encourage you to do so.
Well, thank you for your permission.
Yeah. I actually I had to Google servant or leadership styles because I was asked on a couple interviews like, what's your leadership style? And I was like, bah. There's a couple times I'm like, I don't have an answer for that. So I had to like Google leadership styles, and one of them was service led or service leadership. So I kind of like service led I think is better than servant. I agree. Like servant comes across as like, what are you gonna do for me? What do I get out of it? Kind of thing. I don't know. And you say empathy, but on the leadership side of things, it's more like, I feel like it's more like I'm here to serve you in a way of like help you succeed, right? Because if you're successful, I'm successful. That's actually one of my
I usually say empathetic. I usually say empathetic, but like also I empower my team. I like to keep them inspired. Speaking of servants and leaders, Greg, can you tell me about some of the best and worst people you've worked for?
Oh,
name names. Yeah, Nicole had
names.
No naming names. Nicole had a great idea of writing a book of essays, or like writing a book on like the worst people that we've ever worked for. And I was like, no, we will be sued. For like corporate horror.
Talk about a loaded question. Now, yeah, I'm not going to name any names. However, if they were to ever watch or listen to this, they would know exactly who they are.
Oh.
So I will categorize them as follows. So best people I've worked for, I call them like, leaders that have trust and empowerment. And then the other group are insecure and controlling, right? And I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right? The leaders that have trust and empower their teams are not micromanagers. They're very confident in their own ability. More importantly, they're confident in their team and the people that they've hired to know that they're adults, number one. And number two, that they have the skills and the know-how to take whatever strategy or plan is in place and push it through fruition to success, right? Those are people that I like to work for, and that's kind of how I would describe my leadership style as well. I hire adults, hire competent people, and I trust that they're going to do what they need to do. If there are any roadblocks, part of my role as a manager is to remove those roadblocks for success. We were talking about success 2 minutes ago. Success breeds success, right? If I'm successful, or if the team is successful, I'm successful, the company's successful. And ultimately customers are happy, right?
Yep.
So that's trust and empowerment. Now let's talk about insecure and controlling. I've had a handful of these also in my career, and they've been brutal. Brutal to the point where I have actually resigned from a couple opportunities because it was just too much. The micromanaging, the lack of direction, the lack of understanding, right? We were talking about SEO earlier, and the lack of understanding in terms of, how it helps to drive those conversions and drive revenue. Those are the worst that I've worked for. And so I heard a quote at one point. It says, "Great leaders give direction, poor ones give corrections." That's always resonated with me.
Yeah, that's a good call out. How would you categorize someone who moves the target all the time? What is that?
Someone who's indecisive. I mean, that's really the best way to put it. They're indecisive, and they don't understand what the goal or objectives are and the strategy of how to achieve them. That's why it's a moving target.
Yeah. I had to step away from an opportunity as well where I was disappointed because I was excited to work with this person, but then it was like the task and assignment kept changing. Every time I would deliver something, it was like, oh no, can you do this? And then can you put it in this format? And then can you redo it and do this? And it was like an hour, something that should have taken me like an hour was turning into like this never-ending task. And I'm like, no, that's not happening, you know?
And sometimes there are leaders that just want people to spin their wheels, right?
Hamster.
That's strange.
Yeah, that is strange. Yeah, I worked for a guy who was like, don't just look busy, get work done, like be productive. Like just looking busy doesn't mean you're being productive. And I was like, he would say it to a room full of people, right? And I'm just like, who here is looking busy? I feel like we were all working really hard. I know I was. So it was just kind of interesting.
So I'll tell a quick story about a bad boss that I'm sorry, Nicole, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll tell a story about a bad boss that I had. This is now 25 years ago. The Cliff's Notes version is we were launching a new product. I led the team in terms of launching the new product, brought it to market, was very successful. I ended up getting a presidential award for my efforts. And it was the awards presentation was held at the annual sales meeting, which I think was in Florida at that point. The woman I worked for did not allow me to go to receive the award. Instead, he went and received it on my behalf and told the audience that the only reason why I got the award was because of her direction.
Oh my gosh. That's somebody who didn't get enough recognition in her time.
I think she was very insecure. I think she was in a position that was way over her head. And she didn't like the fact that I was successful in what I did. So
that's like the manager or owner of a baseball team, like pushing out the team and being like, this is my award, not yours.
Right.
That's bad. All right, let's move on. Let's try to move towards a positive note, and we'll wrap this up here pretty quickly. So you talked about transforming reactive teams into strategic engines. I mean, I know that I've been in like integrated marketing agencies where that seems like hurting a cat herder a little bit in your day, in your day-to-day. So yeah, what is that like when you walk into a situation where you're like, oh my God, these teams are just like not talking to each other? What's your like kind of go-to process for getting teams to see how they can work together to achieve a common goal?
Yeah, so it's a combination of being both a cat herder and a cat whisperer. Right?
I like that.
So first and foremost, talked about trust earlier. It's the same thing when you're trying to work cross-functionally and collaborating across different groups, right? So building and establishing trust across teams, clear communication. Everybody's got to be on the same page in terms of an understanding of what the goals are and then how each of us are going to achieve them. And then how each of us will work collaboratively, because there may be some overlap, right? So it's not really a question of somebody stepping on somebody's toes. At the end of the day, we're all in a boat trying to row in the same direction, right? And we want to get there fast, but if somebody's rowing opposite, they're going to hinder our progress going forward. So it's really those couple things, right? It's trying to build that trust, clear communication, making sure everybody's on the same page in terms of the goals, and understanding that it's a team effort to achieve those goals.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, it's not only the internal teams that you're dealing with, like on the client side, a lot of times then they have 3+ agencies they're working with, and they all have their processes and things going on. So yeah.
I didn't even think to add the agency piece into that. It's the role of the marketing person to bring those agencies together to do the exact same function, right? Even though they're external, it doesn't matter. The process is still the same. We've hired you guys because you have this area of expertise that we don't have internally, but nonetheless, your role as our external partner is to make sure that we're all working collaboratively and that we're all working towards a common goal.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. It wasn't in the original list of questions, but so if you don't know the answer to this, that's fine. Is there like a common role that you see missing like across integrated teams? And if so, what is that one role that every like marketer leader should be thinking about? Or maybe
Nicole, it's you. It's you.
Oh my god.
It's
No,
it's
you.
an S. Yeah, no, it's somebody that the SEO, and I'm preaching to the choir here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or you can tell me that I'm right because I don't hear that enough these days. SEO is a bear, right? It's constantly changing. I think in Q4 of last year, I think I remember Google changing their algorithm like 5 or 6 times over the course of like 4 months. It was insane.
That's low.
Maybe it's slow, maybe it's not. All I know is that it's frustrating
Big
because you
ones.
never
There
know
were
when
some
it's
big
coming,
ones, yeah.
and they do it all the time. And I understand why they do it, and rightfully so. However, there isn't anybody, at least in the organizations where I've worked, that has an internal SEO expert, right? It's always outsourced, and you can have 10 different agencies, tell them exactly what you want to do from an SEO perspective, and they're all going to give you 10 different strategies to achieve the goal. So I think having somebody in-house that really lives, eats, and breathes SEO, not necessarily to do it by themselves, but as an inside expert to then work with those external partners on SEO, I think is very important, and it is missing across the board.
Yeah, like as a strategist, and I think SEOs would be smart to sort of come with a full package beyond, what we think of as traditional, like what's our keyword strategy? Like someone, you know what I mean? Someone who can maybe an SEO who can do a little bit of PR, who can do a little bit of content, who understands all these different facets. Because it's not really ever about gaming the system and the with this one strategy. And I think the reason it changes so much, SEO changes and all of that is because the point is at the end of the day to create good quality content and be a good quality brand. And that's why these rules and everything were put into place. And I think we've become about gaming those systems. And now it's sort of like, well, you need to have this many, press releases and PR mentions to give LLM output. And it's like, no, you have to be a strong brand and you have to do quality things. We won't go through what those all are. We just did. But that's why those are in place. It's not a system to be gamed. So
Right, 100%. And that's why Google's changing their algorithms all the time, because they don't want somebody to game the system because it doesn't benefit Google.
Right.
Yeah. I think the problem is people don't A, necessarily understand SEO, or B, they think it's about gaming the system, or C, there's a lot of SEOers out there that are all about gaming the system, and that's not me. I'm more about creating quality content, but also being data driven, so I think it's a lot
and
of
you're
time.
about understanding audience behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the real SEO that you want to hire is somebody who doesn't just live in SEO in the SEO lane, but they've dabbled in some PR, some content, some blogging, some writing. I got started with journalism and then publishing articles online, and people will ask me how do I get started in learning SEO? And I'm always build a website and start writing and publish stuff, do it. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's that's how you kind of learn. So
Totally.
Yeah, Nicole, you hit the nail on the head. I think it's just a fundamental lack of understanding in terms of what SEO is, how it works, how it adds value.
And I'm really excited, I'll be honest, of how it's evolving right now. People are like, oh, do you do TikTok SEO? And I'm like, sure. It's I optimize, or I do YouTube videos and I optimize the descriptions and the titles, but I'm always doing research first before I create the content. So to me, I'm it's just a strategy that you lay over whatever channel it is you're looking at, right?
You're not optimized for Reddit search. You can, any channel or platform.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're sort of like, I know we've been very loquacious. So I have
my
one
God.
last,
I don't know that word.
I think I used it right.
Can you define it?
Loquacious?
That sounds like a word with a spelling bee.
Long-winded.
Spelling bee, SAT word. Yep.
I don't even know.
I mean,
it's a
I don't
plant.
know. I'll be embarrassed if I use it wrong because I'm the word person here, but loquacious.
Tending to talk a great deal. Talkative. Yeah, you used it perfectly. Did you guys hear that?
There you go. Congratulations.
Okay,
Oh
I have
my God.
one last question, and then I have some rapid fire questions for fun. So my last question that you really have to think about: if your marketing career were a Spotify playlist, what would the first 3 songs be? Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. I'm just kidding.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
You know, and it's funny you should ask that question because I mean, you can't see over my left shoulder, but I'm a guitar player. I've got 6 guitars over there in the corner. I've been playing guitar for many years. And so I've never really associated music with my career. So my marketing career, first 3 songs on a Spotify playlist. All right, first one that comes to mind, Under Pressure by Queen.
That's a good one.
Number 2, Bare Naked Ladies, If I Had $1 Million.
Don't know that song. I'm gonna have to listen to it later.
Number 3. All right, well, you can see the Van Halen stuff behind me. So Van Halen's my favorite band of all time. Van Halen's Right Now. There's a lyric in the song.
Van Hagar?
Well, Sammy Hagar is singing, yes, but the band is called Van Halen.
I know, but fine. It's
yes,
not
it's
David Lee Roth's Van Halen.
It's the Van Hagar era.
We're getting technical now.
You know, and so right now, part of the lyrics are, you know, right now there's no tomorrow, right now is everything. And so from a marketing perspective, I mean, that's kind of how we live each day, right? We're not worried about tomorrow, we're worried about today and the results that we produce today. Hence, Under Pressure, hence, If I Had $1 Million.
Sammy Hagar had great hair in that video. I'm dating myself. Yeah.
Wait, I have a fun story that you'll appreciate, Greg. So I used to work at a sushi bar in Laguna Beach, and a guy came in and sat at a sushi bar, and I tried to convince him to get like the specials, you know? And he was like, honey, I've traveled all over the world and I know what I like. And he ordered 6 orders, so 12 pieces total of yellowtail nigiri sushi, just like a plate of yellowtail. And I was like, all right, that's all you want. I worked at a sushi bar that had special sauces, like vegetables and nuts, like all this like fusion stuff. It was delicious. Christina's been there. She can vouch for that. It was delicious. Anyways, he was wearing a Van Halen necklace, and I was like, I was kind of like, who is this guy? Like, kind of, I don't know. I was like, kind of like, this little cheesy necklace, you know. And then he pays with his Black American Express card, and it was Edward Van Halen.
No,
get out of here.
No way.
Yep. And I looked at the card, and I looked at him. No, because he was older. He was like, this was like, I don't know when, like maybe 10, 15 years ago. But I mean, I remember him from like music videos and stuff, but I didn't put it together that it was him because he looked like my dad. Like, honestly, he looked like an older gentleman. Like, I don't know, he's probably in his 50s or early 60s. I don't know how old he was, but he had a woman with him. It was Art Walk in Laguna. And I looked at the card and I looked at him and he goes, yeah, like, that's me.
That's so funny.
That's awesome.
I was like, all right.
If that ever, I mean, a lifelong dream of mine was to meet him, and you know, God rest his soul, he passed in October of 2020. But had that been me, I probably would have passed out.
Yeah, no, I like milked that story with my customers for a while because I was like, hey, you know what, you know who's sitting in this chair right here? And one of the guys I told is like big mega fan like you, like walked over and like was touching the chair, like, oh my God.
And I bet you did. Nicole is one of the most loquacious food servers I've ever met in my entire life. And like, I can't believe she didn't go into sales.
Oh my gosh.
Because the upselling, the cross-selling she would talk to customers for like 20 minutes about their different roll choices and try to sell them.
It was a big deal. I believed in the products. What can I say?
I get you. Okay, do we have time for some rapid fire, or do we have to wrap it up? Okay.
Let's do some rapid fire and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Let's say you're put in charge of marketing socks. What would your first campaign idea be?
God for your feet. Or pillows for your feet.
Ooh, I like that.
Pillows for your feet.
Pillows for your feet. What's something non-work related that actually made you better at your job?
There are two things: active listening and empathy.
Okay.
What about playing guitar? No? What was it?
If only that would be applicable to my career, but no.
I mean, like I would actually tell Nicole, well, no, it is work related. That working at that sushi restaurant. But
So
anyway,
being a surfer, I feel like.
yeah, but that is work related, but not your current job related. So
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Keep going.
What's the better CTA? Download the guide or get the goods?
Oof, I think it depends on your audience.
Yeah.
Can I say neither?
Oh.
I didn't write these.
I don't like.
I mean, I
either,
didn't write these
honestly.
CTAs. Those are not the CTAs that I've used.
Yeah, I would say
get
this.
the goods.
The CTA would, for me, it has to be completely dependent on the audience.
The audience and the brand voice, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Most overused buzzword in marketing right now.
Most overused buzzword in marketing? AI.
Worst marketing trend of the last 5 years.
Over reliance on AI generated content.
Marketing hill you will die on.
Personalization.
Yeah.
Mine's sentence case.
Mine's market research. Gotta know the data. Data,
That's
data. I worked with an analytics person and she would like say that. Data. All right.
Oh my God.
Let's wrap it up. Thanks, Greg, so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you. Yeah, we look forward to watching your career and getting more marketing tips. And yeah, thanks again, Greg.
No, ladies, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, let me know if you ever like me to come back. Happy to do it.
Sounds
Absolutely.
good.